Some directors are unique, they create, and some are more synthesizers. I feel like I'm definitely one of those. Like, I synthesize things around me, things that I know, things that I've seen. You have to compete with yourself. You have to try to improve yourself. I'm not Orson Welles, right? But I can be better than, the last project that I did. I can try to do something different. You'll be surprised at how willing to help people are. If you just have an idea that you're passionate about and you convey a certain confidence that you can pull this off, people will help you just through initiative, really.
Hi, I am Moza, and this is the Ajyal Show podcast. In recent years, Doha has emerged as a hub for commercial filmmaking, attracting talents from all over the world to create impactful advertising. These commercials influence us and shape our societal conversations. Today, we'll explore the process of creating these powerful commercials and delve into how ads can be used as a storytelling tool. Our guest is a talented up-and-coming writer and director who, after majoring in art history at Virginia Commonwealth University in Qatar, found his way into filmmaking. He received Best Narrative Award at the Ajyal Film Festival 2019 for his short film, Falling Leaves, and is known for his impressive work in directing commercials here in Qatar. Currently, he's a writer and director at the Film House and is in the process of developing his first feature film. So let's start this exciting discussion with our special guest, Dimitri Yuri. Very happy to have you.
Thank you for having me.
We're very happy to have you. How have you been?
Great, actually, yeah. I was looking forward to this for a while.
This is exciting.
I'm in my podcast binging era, so I was very curious as to how these work.
You have to tell us what's the feeling of watching yourself on a podcast later.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure it will be tough, but yeah.
So one thing I'm really curious about, you're from Brazil. How did you end up here in Doha?
Right. So my parents, my mom and my stepfather, they work at the Brazilian embassy. They're diplomats. So when I was 13, I left Brazil. We went to Mozambique for a year. Loved it. Got malaria. Almost died. Was great. And then we moved to the US for 2 years, and then Doha. And then by the time we got here, I was in my last year of high school and started university. By the time they left, I just stayed around.
And how long has it been here?
12 years, I think.
Wow.
Here. Long time.
So how did you choose VCU? You were here at your last year of high school. Why did you choose to study here in the first place, and then why VCU?
Nah. Actually, I took a gap year after high school because even though I started moving around when I was 13, in my mind, I was going to eventually go back to Brazil, where all my friends were, and live the Brazilian, kind of go through the steps of a Brazilian education. You do your tests and you get accepted to whatever school you get accepted to, whatever. Never thought it would be possible to study abroad and didn't really register. But then as I was finishing my last year of high school, I was like, maybe I could, But I didn't have my applications ready, none of that. So I was like, I'm going to take a gap year, figure this out. And then, just decided to study art history instead of film because I was working with film a little bit already. I was a videographer. I had done a little short film just on my own. And I felt like I was researching and learning so much about it that I wanted to study something else. I figured this is my passion. This is what I want to do. I'm going to do this anyway. So I might as well use my time studying something I enjoy. Maybe it will help inform whatever I do later. I don't know if it was the best decision, but I really loved it. I'm really happy with it.
So before going more into your experience in art history, how did you start liking film and working in film in the first place?
So and it's not a great way to approach any subject really, but for me, I'm very obsessed with lists, ranking things for some reason. Not because I think things can be objectively better than others, but because I'm always curious as to why do people think this is the best, right? So I came across the IMDb 250 best films of all time. And I was like, I wonder, I saw Shawshank Redemption, Godfather. I was like, what makes these films interesting? So I just started watching them. And then, if you get exposed to enough good cinema, eventually you'll fall in love with it. I think I watched Raging Bull, and the first scene of him shadow boxing, and there's Cavalleria Rusticana in the background. I was just like, yes, this is what I want to do.
And then what about the short film you did?
Which one?
The first one, I would say.
It was just me trying to figure out with my camera how to tell a story. It's a story about a person who has this real disease that makes you paralyzed, but you're conscious the whole time. And I figured this is something I can shoot in my apartment. I can just get, a couple friends maybe to help me, and I can try to tell a story like this. So yeah, it was more of what story can I tell with the resources that I have. And I loved it. I loved the experience of it.
I think, though, that many people do love watching film, but out of those people, not many go into trying to tell their own stories, trying to make films. So what would you say was the reason that you moved from just watching the best films of all time to actually holding a camera and finding a story to tell?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure. I think the connection that I felt with cinema was so strong. It was different. I enjoy a lot of things, but that one felt like this. I feel like this connects with me on a deeper level. I think I love art in general, but I love how cinema kind of pulls together so many different art forms to create one thing. And when it's powerful, it's, super powerful. So I feel like it hit me so hard that I felt like I want to do this. I want to give people this experience that I'm having right now.
And why art history?
I was always a bit of an art history nerd in high school as well. And I actually applied to Virginia Commonwealth in the U.S. For art history. I thought I was going to just study in the U.S. My parents are still here. So when I realized maybe I can just go to VCU here, I just basically walked into the university and I said, hey, I got accepted in the U.S. campus. Can I come here? And they're like, sure. I was so, lucky that they have that major here because, they have, 4 or 5 majors, and the one I wanted is one of them. I just felt like if I learned how art progressed through the ages and different mediums evolved and how different inventions changed the way that artists approach their work, I would have a better understanding of how to tackle my own work. Plus the visual library that you get. When I'm making films, a lot of the times I know a frame can work because I've seen it before in a painting from, the 1600s. So I know it works. I don't have to guess whether it's going to be good or not. I feel like that really helps. I was watching an interview with Steven Soderbergh, and he was saying that some directors are unique. They create, and some are more synthesizers. They gather information. I think there's a mixture of both in everyone, but I feel like I'm definitely one of those. Like I synthesize things around me, things that I know, things that I've seen, and try to just compile the things I like the most into one thing that makes sense. And I feel like art history really helps you do that.
And when you were in art history, were you already determined into becoming a filmmaker and going into the industry?
Yeah, I never thought I would work with art history. I helped out in some Studio 20Q films in Northwestern. I made some films with my friends that I met from there. And I always knew that's what I wanted to do.
Didn't you feel like you were losing on learning the technicals of films, let's say that a film degree would give you?
Yes, in the sense of, for example, camera operating, right? Setting up a red, setting up an ARRI. It's something that I wasn't familiar with, right? And Northwestern students were. Everything else, I felt like I could stand on my own with the research that I was doing, with my own personal studying, especially when it comes to screenwriting and directing. I didn't really want to do any of the technical aspects of filmmaking that much. It was always interesting to me, and I learned them. But I always wanted to write and direct. And for that, I feel like you have to try, you have to write a lot, you have to read a lot, you have to watch a lot of films. The technical part helps because it helps you communicate with your crew and everything. But the most important thing is learn how to tell a story.
And was art history relevant to learning storytelling and writing, or did you do that independently?
It was more the visual side of things. I always thought of myself as, it's hard to separate storytelling from visual storytelling, but I always thought of myself more in terms of like the literary sense of, you know, storytelling, like a writer. But I was never really a visual guy, and I feel like art history helped with that. Because if you get immersed in a visual library that you know impresses you, you're gonna get some ideas here and there. And I'm still stealing from it to this day. So.
And after that, how did you start your career in filmmaking?
I just got lucky. I got my best friend Nisreen went to do her master's in LA, and she had a job at the film house as a project coordinator. So she just suggested me. They accepted me. And within the first month, I went to the CEO's office and I told him, hey, I'm a writer. If you guys have briefs they want me to write for, I can try it out. And he started giving me some opportunities. I didn't think I was going to direct at that point. I just thought I was a writer. But we have a policy that if you write, you direct as well. So I was kind of forced to learn how to direct again. Even though I had done it in the past, for some reason at that point in my life, I thought I was just a screenwriter. I was really obsessed with screenwriting. But yeah, then started doing, you know, answering some briefs, learning, improving a little bit. My first writing, like pitches and treatments, they were completely outside of the brief. They didn't make any sense. They weren't connected to the brand in any way. I was just trying to make a movie that I would like to watch. But then eventually you learn how to combine both of them.
And do you think right now you still prefer writing over directing?
Mm-hmm. I can't think of them that separately
yeah.
anymore. I love writing, and I could see myself writing something that I don't direct. I think now directing is actually easier than writing. Because directing forces you, there's a lot of planning in directing, but a lot of the time you're there and you have to figure something out. You're very connected to the thing that you're doing. With writing, it gives me a lot of time to overthink and to doubt myself and to start and stop. And yeah, the writing process now to me is more difficult.
And is it more rewarding, if that's the right word to use, to write versus direct? Because you put like more effort into it, or would you say that at the end of the day you just see the end product?
Yeah, that's tough. The feeling of someone watching your film and responding well to it is incredible. It's some of the most rewarding, like the reactions that I had at Ajyal, for example, for Falling Leaves, some of the most rewarding things I've experienced. But especially features. If you write a feature and you spend, months on 110 pages, 120 pages, only you know how difficult that was. And the feeling of accomplishment when it's good in the end is huge as well. But it's not easily shareable with people. You don't usually give someone, here's my feature, 120 pages. Please read it. Tell me what you think. No one's going to read it, right? It's more, I guess, shareable. I think writing still, but especially features, specifically features, not shorts. If it's between shorts and making a short, I'd rather make a short. But if it's to write something and finish a feature that you're really proud of, that's a really good feeling.
Is it a time commitment thing?
It's a mind commitment thing, because you can do it really fast. If you're in the zone, you can do it. I think even Raging Bull that I was talking about was written in like 2 weeks. Sometimes you just have a burst of inspiration and you just do it. Sometimes it takes a long time. And sometimes, if you write, say 100 pages, and then you have to rewrite that, and you have to change one thing in the first act, it's an entire puzzle you have to reassemble. It's a monster. Even doing a proof, like if you're proofreading your own script is already terrifying, because you're like, okay, I guess I'm taking the next 4 hours reviewing this. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. I think that's why you feel so accomplished when you finish.
I want to ask you more about, let's say, like the day-to-day life of graduating university and deciding to have a career in the film industry, which is like a very different sphere than any conventional 9 to 5 job that you just go sit in an office, have your tasks, finish them, and then go home. You'd work on projects, you'd be in different sites, you'd have, I imagine, different tasks every day and different things that you need to do. How is the lifestyle, the dynamic of being in such a work environment? Do you think it's sustainable? Is it something that, again, is rewarding, is satisfactory for someone that's always looking to accomplish something rather than just be part of a machine?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very different when you go from the production side of things to the creative side of things. Not that those should be separate, but a lot of the times they are. I started as a project coordinator, and I had to do a lot of Excel sheets, and that was therapeutic, and that had a clear momentum, and you would sit there and you would do them, and it felt good to me, honestly. I like doing those. And at the same time, it feels like you're doing more work because you're getting a lot of things done. And sometimes I go to the office and I write like 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs. But the amount of mental stress that I was with throughout that whole day, trying to figure out how to approach this thing, that can be more exhausting. So it depends. If like I have the script ready and I'm just in pre-production, I'm just doing storyboards and imagining things, that's so much fun. I can do that all the time. But if it's staring at a blank page and trying to come up with something, sometimes when you get stuck, it can be exhausting.
You do work on commercials a lot.
Yeah.
How would you say that's different from working on a personal project? Or do you still have the same stress of trying to write and trying to make a story, basically, that you want the brand to have?
There are pros and cons. The pro is that it's shorter, which means you can write a good treatment in a couple days, 3 days. And you can use a burst of inspiration to get you through it, right? It's more difficult because it's not just about what you like. If you're writing a script, it's just about what do you want to see? What story do you want to tell? And a commercial, you have to consider the brand that you're telling a story, the brief that you received, what message they want to convey, what matches all of those things together, plus what you like, what you think is interesting. And sometimes finding something that combines all of those is really tough. But at the same time, you don't have to commit months and months just in the writing of it, right? Usually you get an idea, maybe you get 2 or 3, and you try to put them together, and you see how it goes. So for someone like me who overthinks a lot writing, the short form of the commercial is great because you get an idea and you kind of put it together, and it's easy to polish it. But yeah, I would say those are the main differences.
But if you get different clients every while and they want different things and different styles and like completely different industries, let's say, doesn't that make you feel like you're not doing anything of your own? You don't have your own style. It's nothing personal. You're just like doing work that the clients want, and at the end of the day, you want to make them happy. That's your job. And maybe it has the pros that you mentioned, like how it's like short and you just get it over with. But do you feel like you're compromising on other things?
It's not every project that's amazing and you get to do whatever you want and it's rewarding and fulfilling. A lot of them you're doing, if you walk into a hair salon, you're going to ask the person to give you a haircut exactly how you want it. Even though that person has craftsmanship and artistry, at the end of the day, they have to give you the cut that you want, right? Sometimes with commercials is like that. Sometimes you get to be when you get the trust of a client is great because you can be super creative and your opinions matter to the client and they know, okay, you've done this before and we really like that, so we trust your opinion. So it's a mixture. It's like, they say like one for them, one for me. Like a lot of the time is like that. Some periods you're doing a lot more work that you're not necessarily connected with, but for me that's good as well because it keeps exercising, that muscle. Because if I don't have that, a lot of the time I'll feel overwhelmed and I don't have a clear deadline in mind and I just won't do it, right? But having the projects continuously, it helps me stay active.
And how do you maintain, like let's use the hairstylist analogy, how do you make sure that you still also like the end product, not only the client? That's a
skill that I'm still learning and I'm a lot better at it now. But it's super tough. And some of them you have to just understand that it's not, we all have our styles of things that we like, and we all have the kind of content that we think, you know, that we appreciate and we like watching. Sometimes you're not going to be doing that, and it's okay. You know, you can still work on your craft and strive to do something really well done with a lot of care. You know, maybe the camera movement that you can use in this commercial is not the type of camera movement that you would love to do, but you can still focus on other aspects of it: the art direction, the composition, the acting. You know. But a lot of the times also you fail. A lot of the times you create something that you watch back and you're like, I should have done this differently. I should have done that. And I don't know how other people are, but for me, it's often like it took me a long time for me to be comfortable with the things I'm making and for me to start liking the things I'm making. It was a lot of, let me just get through this and make sure the client is happy. And then somewhere in between, I was like, oh, maybe I can do both. I can get the client to be happy and I also can create something that I'm proud of.
Let's take a best case scenario example where the client gives you the space to do whatever you want, as long as you basically deliver the idea of the commercial. What would that process look like from a creative perspective? And then we can talk a bit about the production of it as well.
Depends on like the styles that are kind of in my head at the time. Like I watch a lot of stuff, a lot of the new stuff being done, and every once in a while I see something, I'm like, maybe I can do something like this, but slightly different and add my own twist to it, and it just stays in my mind. And then whenever an opportunity like this comes along, I'm like, maybe I can incorporate this into here. And then, but other than that, it's just, if you can do whatever you want, it's great, but it's also, you can do whatever you want. So like, what are you going to do? The lack of restrictions is also difficult to deal with sometimes. The process is the same. But I think, in my opinion, it has more pressure on me because if it doesn't turn out in a way that I'm proud of, I'm the only person to blame because there was no other obstacles in my way other than just what I could have done. There's always obstacles, but in the mind of an overthinker, that's where you go to.
And how do you incorporate storytelling into commercials? Because I would assume that to make a really good commercial, you want the people to connect with it, to feel, to relate to the brand, and to try to achieve basically the goals, whether it's like sales or whatever exposure the brands want to the people. So how do you, especially if it's not something personal, not something that you chose to write about, how do you get inspiration to write something relatable, write something intentional about it?
I always try to, my commercials, I always try to make them super storytelling driven. Some of them, I try to make them like movies. I try to pitch that all the time. Let's shoot this like a film, you know? So I'm guilty of like always trying to force that into it. But even the projects that are just more like visual spectacle, that's also it's a part of cinema, you know? Visual storytelling is a part of cinema. And even though it's not necessarily a linear narrative like you would approach in a short film where you start from a place and you go through a journey and you end somewhere, you can still, you know, reflect character emotions with a specific style and a specific cinematography. You can convey energy through camera movement and all these things. All things that it takes a while for you to realize. Like I said, I wasn't a very visual person to begin with. So doing something that's not very narrative oriented was tough for me in the beginning. But after a while, you fall in love with just creating beautiful visuals as well. There's a lot of, for example, like perfume commercials. They never make sense, right? They're just like, they evoke a feeling. You try to dissect like a Dior perfume commercial, it's just like someone whispering in the background, like Dior, da, da, da. And the images don't correlate with what you're seeing at all. But they try to create a feeling, and it's, you know, it's fun. It's fun.
And do you think the process of trying to come up with something creative, whether visually or whether in the story, is something that you learn throughout your experience, or it's just something that you either have or you don't have and you should work on Excel and not...
No, you definitely learn. I think with everything, in every skill, the world is very unfair and some people are much better than others. I see some people putting out work and they're like 19 years old, and I'm like, how did you do this? You know, I'm still trying to get something as good as that. But you can learn. And it's such a cliche, but you have to compete with yourself. You have to try to improve yourself. Orson Welles made Citizen Kane when he was 25. I'm not Orson Welles, right? But I can be better than, you know, the last project that I did. I can try to do something different, and you can definitely learn. But you have to love it. It's difficult to learn. Yeah.
Throughout your experience making all of these different commercials, was there any project that you felt more personally connected to in comparison to others?
There's a few highlights. I did a documentary about MF Hussein for a Qatar Foundation that I really loved. It's a short documentary. I just finished one for a company in Thailand called Desert Diamonds that we had complete creative control over, and we just made a 3.5-minute short film that has a message that I don't think any jewelry advertising has ever tried to say, which is, I mean, I'm not going to spoil it. I mean, actually, by the time that maybe this comes out, the film will be out. Which is like, jewelry advertising always tries to use their product as like, okay, if you get this, you're going to be happy, you know, like even the sentence, diamonds are a girl's best friend, you know, and it's like, we're past that now, right? Can we agree that there's more to life than diamonds, and that a girl's best friend is actually a well-lived, full life, experiencing things and excelling at your job, and like the ups and downs and all the beautiful things about being, you know, experiencing the world. So that's what we try to do. Just paint a portrait of a young woman in the modern world with the message that the diamonds are just an accessory and everything else is all the important things. And it was great that the company agreed to that, because not often that you see a jewelry company be like, yeah, you can say that my product is just an accessory. You're kind of diminishing the importance of it. But at the same time, I feel like that's real and people relate to that, right? Yeah, I would say that's one of the highlights so far.
And is there a reason that you relate to these projects more? Is it more of in a story perspective, a message perspective, or there's also a creative element to it, a more like working on it element?
Altogether, I would say. This one was special throughout. I think the message was special, the client interaction was special. The way everyone on set was contributing, and you could see, sometimes you're on set and you see that everyone else realizes that what you're making is really cool, right? And they get excited and they're like suggesting things. This was one of those. When people realize that you're creating something special, they get excited as well.
And through the different projects that you worked on, do you notice, like, let's say an overarching theme maybe that when you see them, you're like, oh, I made this. Like, I can tell that there is some part of its style, some part of a story that it definitely shows that I was behind it.
There's like genres of, there's like the fast montage with VO, and then there's a little bit of me in there, because usually I write the VO. A lot of the times I perform the VO as well, so it's hard to even separate those. There's different islands of film. So like if there's this one style and I can see similarities in them and I can see a little bit of my voice in this style, but you can't necessarily see the connection between this style and the other one. But this one also has things that I consider to be mine, or like traits that I like in films. In like narrative, much more. In short films and my writing for features and all that. I have an MO. They tend to be sad stories about death. And yeah, I feel like, because I have this idea of like, I want to explore this theme as well as I can, and then I'll move on. But I feel like I've never done it, right? So I started with Falling Leaves, and I liked it. And then I was like, no, I can do this a little bit better.
It can be a little bit sadder.
Eventually, I'm going to move on to something else. But for now, I've been stuck on existentialism and death for the past 8 years.
Do you think that if you did not go into commercials, you wouldn't have had the experience that kind of forces you to try different things and then like things that you didn't think that you'd like?
Visually, I think I would have been pretty weak. Actually, I would have needed more references. You never know. Maybe I would have figured it out some other way. But yeah, for sure. for sure. I always focused so much on the writing, and I never thought of the visual side. And the commercials, they force you to be visual, to, you know, which is why this MF was saying documentary was so important, because it was the first time that it kind of clicked to me. They're like, oh, I can just represent this in a way that doesn't feel like a documentary. It can just be an abstract representation of a feeling or a moment in someone's life, and you start coming up with really interesting visual ideas. But it takes a while for that to click, at least for me.
You compared a bit commercials to narratives in terms of what you like. Do you think that you feel like you worked on a real project when you work on like a film, not a commercial? Or is it the same amount of work, the same amount of effort that you put in both, so it doesn't matter?
It's the same amount of work. It's the same amount of satisfaction. Some commercials are super hard to do. But I think you get that with commercials as well, depending on the commercial that you do. But what drove me to this medium is using the medium of cinema and that form of storytelling to maybe unlock or reflect on a truth about the human condition that can only be represented in this way, right? Through this multi-medium form of storytelling that is cinema. Some commercials are not about that. Some commercials are just about making cool stuff and showing a product in the light that the client likes, and that's okay. But the ones that you get to really dive into a character, those are the ones that I gravitate towards.
When you see a commercial, it's usually just like the commercial and then it's a X brand commercial. But when you see a film, it's a film made by X director.
Yeah.
So does like the difference in credit and like acknowledgement of your role differs in the way you approach the work or the way you feel about it? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it does. It does. The short films and features, they're
in a sense,
they're
like
storyteller's
you don't own
medium.
the project.
Yeah, like you watch a film because of the voice that's telling you the story. And a commercial, a lot of the time, that's not the case. But with the best in the business, like the best commercial directors that I like and inspire me, you watch it because they're making it, because I want to see what they're doing. So it depends. I guess if you're in, the business, you kind of know and you want to know who did it. But yeah, as a consumer, you don't really think about those things.
Do you always ask yourself who did the commercial when you watch a commercial?
If it's a really good one, yes. Yeah.
If it's a bad one,
yeah.
you
Sometimes
don't
I can figure it out. Sometimes there's some directors, like I love the work of this American director called Miles J. And sometimes I see a commercial and I'm like, I think Miles did this, and it's like, yeah, right on. And you can feel his style just through and he does all kinds of things. But yeah, I guess the best in the world, they also get the freedom to
choose what
to
they
be
want to
themselves.
work on,
Yeah. Because at that level, you're paying for a commercial done by this director. There's a Chanel commercial directed by Martin Scorsese with Timothée Chalamet, and it's amazing. But at the same time, like, it's Martin Scorsese. Like, he gets to do whatever he wants. So when you see it, you're like, okay, there's an author behind this. It's not just
Let's move a bit towards your own work outside of the commercial production. How do you still find time with a full-time job and working on so many different projects with so many clients and having all of those demands, and you still find time to try to develop projects of your own, work on them, whether writing them, actually starting to produce them? How does that balance work?
It can be a necessity sometimes, especially if you go through a long stretch where you feel like there wasn't that right project that you really got to exercise your creativity, and you feel like you need to do something, right? The life of a writer and director for commercials, sometimes it's incredibly busy when you're on the shoot, and it's like 18-hour days, 16-hour days, and barely rest and all that. And sometimes you do have a little bit of, I just submitted a treatment, maybe I need to wait a day or two before I get feedback. In those 2 days, try to get as much as you can. But the problem is, if you spend all day working on a creative proposal for a commercial, by the time I get home, writing a short film writing a feature is tough because I feel like you don't have those that inspiration anymore. Luckily, the film house sees the value in writing narratives and writing features, and they give me the freedom, to write my own things during, office hours, because, they like my work. They want to see me excel. Whenever I write a feature, they all want to read it. And I mean, sometimes you get lucky with a work environment like this, but if it wasn't for that, yeah, it would be super difficult.
Did you write your film Falling Leaves while working this job?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. But shorts are a bit easier. You can I've written, I don't know, like 50, 60 shorts. So you can get a short done in like 1 or 2 days, and then you can assess whether it's good enough to start rewriting and actually thinking about making it. But yeah, Falling Leaves is like all the other ones. It was something that I was like, okay, let me write this. I need to write this. And then by the end, what usually results in me going like, okay, this was an interesting experience, but I don't think this is something I want to film. With Falling Leaves, I was like, no, we need to make this now.
Why did you decide it was different?
I don't know. Some of them just, I felt like it worked. Something clicked, and I kept rereading it, and I was like, this is working for me. I think this is the one. And it's hard. It hasn't really happened since. Like, I've written a feature that I really like after that. But even shorts, I've written shorts that I liked, and then 2 weeks later I read it again. I'm like, oh, it still needs work. With Falling Leaves, I felt like it was ready from the beginning.
And if you work on so many or like multiple personal projects, do you feel like even if you like abandon them midway, do they like build on each other in a sense if you're exploring the same theme?
For me, for sure. Usually like I have 2 feature ideas that I'm thinking about now, and they're all very similar to the point that I wouldn't, if I had to pitch to somebody, I wouldn't even say I have these 2 things because they're so similar that you have to pick one or the other, They deal with so many similar elements. I wouldn't even be comfortable saying these are 2 separate features. I'm just like working on them together to see which one I like the most to explore these core ideas that I like. And a lot of the times I start a feature, I finish, stop halfway, and then I pick it back up 2 years later, and something is unlocked. It's, you never know. I have a really weird process. Some people, they get things done. They just like, I'm going to write a feature, and they spend a month or 2 and they write it. Sometimes it happens. It has happened twice to me, but most of the time it's like on and off. Start, stop. Start, stop.
Do you think that in commercials you have the same, not obligation, but you have the same like want to include some sort of emotion in the same way that you would include it in a film? And how would those 2 compare?
Yeah.
Especially since you do films that are really sad. Mm-hmm. Do you do commercials that are sad?
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to do, if I can do whatever I want, they tend to be weirdly nostalgic and kind of melancholic, and they try to evoke a feeling that by the end you're like, I like making those kinds of films. I like watching those kinds of films. But with time, I also learn how to enjoy like the funny commercials. If I want to make something funny, I learn how to enjoy that, or something that's just cool and it has like a youthful vibe to it. You learn how to enjoy those different things. But if left to my own devices, it doesn't matter what the brand is, I will usually make a sad story out of it. Yeah.
Why do you think?
I don't know. I feel like the sadness is such a powerful feeling. Melancholy and nostalgia, all those things, is such a powerful feeling. And they're so beautiful in their own way. Like, sadness to me is not a bad thing. Sadness is, what a privilege it is to be alive and feel sadness. It's such a strong thing, So a lot of the times when you watch a sad film, I come out of the cinema feeling just like, like I've really felt things, like I'm exhausted. This was draining, but it was, I felt alive because I was there and I felt these really strong emotions.
And would you think that if a commercial makes you sad, it would make you buy the thing?
Not necessarily sad. Okay, but bittersweet for sure. I think bittersweet is key.
I think maybe nostalgic.
It's not about just depressing for being depressing, but it's and you need to have that moment of like, that's what you should aim for.
So one more theme to sort of end on. If someone is going into filmmaking industry, what would you say, especially someone just out of university, really passionate about the industry, not a lot of like real life experience, what's, let's say, like a red flag that they should avoid?
I mean, think about any kind of medium, how are you going to how can you be a novelist if you haven't read enough novels? You know, how can you be a filmmaker if you haven't watched enough films? You need to see what has been done in the past and what works and what doesn't. I feel like that's very important. And don't wait so long to try and do something, because chances are you're not Orson Welles that's going to make Citizen Kane at 25. You're going to have to do a lot of stuff that you're not proud of before you're actually proud of something you make. So it's better to start early and just do it often. I mean, get people involved, get your friends involved. I would say those are the main things. You'll be surprised at how willing to help people are. If you just have an idea that you're passionate about and you convey a certain confidence that you can pull this off, people will help you, and you can start building a little team in, you know, just through initiative, really.
Do you think in the beginnings of your filmmaking career, were there any advices that you should not have listened to, or maybe some really good advices?
Let me think, because I was so like into screenwriting, and there's a lot of screenwriting advice that I don't think holds up. Let me try to think of one. Okay, there's some misunderstandings. For example, the old write what you know, right? So everyone writes about being a struggling screenwriter trying to make it in Hollywood. No, it's like writing what you know is write about an emotional truth that you know to be the case, and that it's important to you. And whether your story has flying cars or not, it doesn't matter. That's still, you know, the core of your story is true. That's usually misunderstood, but I feel like people figure it out eventually. It's like, I'm not going to just keep writing these weirdly autobiographical things just because write what you know. I would say that.
And you think for you, where do you see yourself next?
Next?
Yeah.
I want to go back to telling longer stories, whether it's a short feature, which is in the pipeline. And also branching out and doing something else, like within filmmaking, but talking about a different theme, you know, with a different style, a different kind of movie that I never thought I would be making, you know. I always wanted to write a thriller, like an investigative thriller, which I've done, and we're hopefully going to make that. And then I really want to do something sci-fi next. I love genre. I love starting from a place of genre and then imagining what if people reacted to all of these things like we would react to these insane, crazy concepts, and that's what interests me. So I don't know. Maybe after sci-fi, I'll try a horror film. I don't know. I love cinema, so to me, I would love to try all genres.
Thank you, Dimitri.
Thank you for having me. This is great.